Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. Taylor and Mark with you on this beautiful, nice, cool morning in Tennessee. I'm just such a huge fan of the fall. I'm not going to be a fan when the large oak tree outside my house starts shedding its leaves and I have to get out there with my leaf blower every single day to get the leaves out of the yard. But it is beautiful and it is nice and it's perfect walking season. And honestly, I've been to a lot of states, I've visited a lot of states. I don't think there's anything better than fall in the deep South in Alabama and Tennessee. I know you would
The
disagree. What is your?
Northeast, like Boston, especially it's
That's
incredible.
probably true.
Vermont, yeah, I think that you just haven't been up there in the fall.
That's probably true. I did go to Boston in October and it was like winter cold. Like what I'm used to is
Oh,
winter cold. But there is a reason why all of us basic girls watch Gilmore Girls during the fall. It's set in
yep.
Connecticut in the fall. There is a reason why we do that. It just feels so good with all the warm colors and everything. So I do see what you're saying. Maybe I should take a little trip to the New England area in the fall and let it win me over.
I think the good thing about the deep South, like you said, is like there's a huge differential. Like when you go from summer to fall, it's like going from 100 degrees to like 75, and that feels better than like the
Hmm.
Northeast going from 82 to 70. But like the leaves and stuff are so much better there. But I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy that I'm not sweating every moment. It's still supposed to
I
be the
know.
80. It's still supposed to be in the 80s this
I
week, so I'm not
know.
super excited, but it's better than it was, and that's what we have to. We have to take these small victories.
I know. Well, everyone who knows me knows that I rent all of my clothes. I do clothing rental all the time, and I'm trying to get more into the fall clothing rental. And so I rented all these like nice fall things for this month. And I tried to wear something on Saturday, and I took one step out my front door and said, "Nope, still too hot for this." Came in and changed. So it is tricky to dress in the fall in Tennessee. Justin said we're in false fall right now, meaning that we'll go back to summer, and I think that's going to happen this weekend. But
Yeah.
so far so good. Honestly, it was beautiful this morning, so we'll take it. Um, One of the things that I used to love when I was in college was walking around campus when the leaves changed to fall. And I've done that once at Belmont, Vanderbilt. Like, I just think it's so beautiful on the quads and everything. And it's no secret, Vanderbilt has a beautiful campus and they're a great school. The U.S. News and World Report, however, I wouldn't say they would beg to differ, but
Yeah.
they're measuring on different criteria than I am. I measure based on, is there a Jimmy Johnson proximity and how do the trees look in the fall? They check both of those boxes, and there's a Chili's super close to them. I think Vanderbilt's great. Vanderbilt Vanderbilt also thinks that Vanderbilt is great. So much so that this week, when the U.S. News and World Report's college rankings were released and Vanderbilt dropped from 13th to 18th, tied with Dartmouth, which I don't know why anyone would complain about being tied with Dartmouth. That is very prestigious. Boy, did they release a statement. And I actually tried to read the entire statement before I got on the podcast, and it was too long that I felt like my eyes were crossing. Um, it's it I want to be careful what I say here because I do appreciate Vanderbilt and I do appreciate who they are, but don't be a whiner. I don't know. I might be being a little too harsh. I know, Mark, you have some serious thoughts on it, but like, if you're they criticize everything all the time. They're just so negative about everything all the time. And if you're going to complain about a US News and World Report ranking where you've dropped 5 spots, that makes me think you got something to hide or you're trying to compensate for something. I don't know. I think it's a little suspicious. Mark, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think they just need to shut up. I don't think anybody cares. They moved down from 13 to 18. They don't like the new criteria, and ultimately I feel like, the old criteria has issues. Like all these are all subjective measures. If you don't like the
Mhm.
criteria, that's fine. Then cite another one that has better criteria for you. Ultimately, they probably set it up so that the previous criteria they made sure they would rank high in, going from 13th to 18th. If you're complaining about that, it's like, gosh, get a life. And
Get a
the
life.
best thing about this is I wish that Vanderbilt cared more about the methodology of their poll as they do about the methodology of this report, because they don't seem to care at all about that. That methodology doesn't matter to them. The methodology where it hurts them seems to be where they're concerned. It's just I feel like Vanderbilt's already thought of, as a school. Of course, it's a great school. Everyone knows this, but it's already
Yeah.
kind of thought of as kind of stuck up, kind of university. And this just goes to show that that is the case. The people in charge, the fact that you're spending all this time and a whole public like relations campaign complaining about falling 5 spots in this polls. Shut up. How is this? Here's my question is, if I'm paying tuition there, I am so mad my money's being used for them to go on this weird PR attack against U.S. News and World Report for just doing their ranking. And guess what? Unlike Vanderbilt's polls, all of their methodology is actually out there for you to see. So that's a really positive thing about it. Whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter.
I knew you were going to say that. The moment I read methodology in the article, I was like, oh, Mark's going to hit them on their poll methodology. It's true. My first thought was maybe like they should poll all of the universities or influencers or decision makers, and then they can just, make the results how they want to see them, because that seems like their sweet spot and what they do. It's just pathetic. I agree with you. If I was paying that exorbitant tuition, which I got kind of curious a little while, a couple months ago, and started looking up like tuitions of private universities just to see, because I went to a public university and I had a full scholarship. So like, I don't know what is normal and what is not, what is high. Dude, that's expensive. Like it is expensive to go to Vanderbilt. And, they're digging up their sports fields, and they currently have a Jumbotron hanging from a crane, and yet they're paying their PR people to write a 5,000 word essay on why the methodology of the U.S. News and World Report is bad. It's just like, where are your priorities, guys?
They also have 0 wins. Their football team has 0 wins. Like
true.
they're 0-4. They're supposed to UNLV. I'm really sick of this Vanderbilt thing. And it's like, they are like the, kind of like your friends who, have a lot of money and want to let you know they have a lot of money all the time.
Yes.
That's what it feels like Vanderbilt is. Like they want to let you know how elite they are all the time. And of course, it is a good school. No one's arguing that, but it's like, yeah, maybe you're protesting too much.
Protest too much. I heard Lisa Vanderpump say that on an episode of Real Housewives the other night, and I put it into my lexicon formally. Yeah, it's just a little suspicious. That's what I meant when I said it's a little suspicious. Why are you fighting this so hard? So that's our rant of the week, because we think it's so incredibly stupid, and Vanderbilt just needs to shut up and keep doing what they do well. But congratulations to Mark's alma mater, Marquette, for making it in the top 50 for the first time. Didn't you say ever? Like, this is a big deal.
I mean, it's not. It's not a big deal. That's the whole point. This doesn't matter. This whole thing doesn't matter. Is what I'm saying. Like, I just feel like all the rankings are based on whatever people want it to be, and it's like I think that these are, every school you can look at and be like, oh, this school is ranked, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's like, what is your program ranked? What are you going for? Can you get a job afterwards? Or do you have a good ROI? I know, for example, I think MTSU is like one of the top like 5 values in the country. That's great. That's more important than this stupid ranking. And again, they can do whatever they want. It's great. Rankings are great because the whole point of them are you discuss them. Same thing with college football. It's fun to talk about, and there's no definitive yes that this is the 18th best school or whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I ultimately went to a state school over a lot of my other options, because the value is better. So, and we have a whole report on that on our website if that interests you. But all of this way crying over dropping 5 spots, it's embarrassing for Vanderbilt, and they need to move on. You know what else is embarrassing? Is grown men. I'm about to be really ugly here. Grown men who don't dress like grown men and respect the integrity of their office. Okay. And I realize it's kind of hypocritical of me to say this as I'm sitting here in a sweatshirt on the podcast, whatever. But I'm also not a U.S. Senator. Okay. The new Senate dress code standards, I don't know. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but when I was little, we dressed up for church, and I still dress up for church. I do think that there is a dignity, there's a respect shown of dressing for where you're going. When you go to a wedding that says black tie, you don't wear jeans and a t-shirt. There's just a dignity in that. And I have major issues, and it makes me sound like a snob, and I know it makes me sound like a snob, and that's not my intention at all, is to sound like a snob. To me, it's a respect thing. You are you are one of 2 people representing your state in one of the highest offices in the land as a U.S. Senator. Dress to impress, and dress like you respect the office. You might disagree with me, Mark, but I take issue with it.
I mean, the thing I don't like is they did it for one person. This is essentially because John Fetterman looks like he's homeless and wants to dress like he's homeless.
It's like a
Also,
college freshman.
I was gonna say he honestly dresses a lot like I did in college. I mean, his shorts aren't baggy enough, but or long
Right.
enough. But I mean, it's like I don't care. People can dress however they want. I mostly agree with you, and I think it's an unspoken rule, But I don't like they're changing it for one person. If the
Mhm.
Senate votes on and they're like, okay, yeah, everyone agrees. It's. And I also think there's different levels, right? Like you could say, oh, we don't need to be, suit and tie every day, but you also can't wear mesh shorts and a long t-shirt. I mean,
Yes.
there's a lot of weird
Like,
stuff going on, and some people say it's taking away from the conversation because you obviously had Lauren Boebert getting a little bit handsy and
yeah,
doing
she's a little weird.
yeah, and smoking whatever, and you had this whole Fetterman thing with the dress code. It's like some people are like, well, this is taking away from the real issues, and it probably is to some extent. But I do think
Yeah.
both of these people, are wrong, and it's.
Mhm.
If I was John Fetterman, I would dress better for that. Again, I don't care. He dresses in his free time. In some ways, I think people were like, oh, okay, this guy is not like your normal politician on the trail, which maybe helped him. But it's like there is a certain
Probably.
level where people have different, I can dress one way at home while recording this podcast than if I went to the legislature, and
Or
people
if
can
we
dress
went to
different.
like see our board, like
Yeah.
you're out there representing people and you're representing yourself. You should have more respect for yourself than to dress like this. And I agree with you. If they wanted to ditch and they said ties weren't required anymore.
Yeah.
If they wanted to say khakis and a golf shirt, but there is a respect and a dignity for the office. And I just think there's so much that's going on in our country right now that I think that other countries could look at us and say, this is a circus, this is a joke, this is a middle school. That this is not in any way helping both Lauren Boebert and Sean Fetterman. Like, it's just not helping. That does, and there have been dress codes over time that women were expected to dress a certain way, and they've changed it to make it a little more acceptable for women to not have to wear a jacket. Now you can wear a dress, whatever that is. That's still showing. I don't see any problem with changing a dress code if everyone agrees on it, but making it so that you can basically roll out of bed, brush your teeth, if that, and head to the Senate. I don't think that conveys the proper amount of respect for your office.
And
That's my whole thing.
I think you're giving John Fetterman a lot of credit thinking that he brushes his teeth. But
I did say if that. I did
yeah.
say if that.
But actually, the Washington Post wrote a really good piece on it. And it's just like, what is this going to lead to, right? Are you going to have people like, AOC have like tax the rich shirts on, or,
Mhm.
somebody, Matt Gaetz have, the Biden crime family on a shirt. It's like people are going to be making political statements. They're going to be wearing sport. It's like, there's a certain decor that's expected. I'm somebody
Mhm.
who, obviously in my personal time, I dress down a lot more than a lot of people do, but there's just this basic respect. And like, we're already so polarized as a country. Like, this is just going to make us more polarized. This is
I
the one
know.
kind of area, like there's some level of respect for the institution where everything else seems to not have that. And we're kind of just taking away that last vestibule of respect, I guess.
I totally agree. I did not expect us to agree this strongly on it because
Mm.
Mark, if it was up to Mark, he'd wear sweatpants every day. If it was up to me, I'd wear a dress and high heels every day. Like, we are very different with this, but it is just, if the two of us can agree that respect for the office should be shown, then I think that maybe it's not a political issue. It's pretty. I think that everyone could probably agree on that. And I don't know if folks are going to roll in there wearing Alabama football sweatshirts. Maybe I'd
They
change
might.
my mind if someone did.
Probably
But
Auburn. Tommy Tuberville probably wearing an
oh,
Auburn shirt, right?
that is so upsetting. That is so gross. One of my best friends works for him, and she posted a birthday post the other day for him, and it was just all Auburn stuff. And I was like, this is just upsetting. But speaking of Auburn and college football and everything, I'm just going to say it, and it hurts me to say it. Alabama is not good this year. And it really hurts. There's a lovely gentleman who goes to church with me. He's probably like, my parents' age. His kids are my age. And I was greeting at church this week, and he came up and hugged me and whispered in my ear, "We're so bad." And it really hurt my feelings, but I never say things like this, but I admit it. Like, we're bad. Like, we're not good, and it hurts, and that's all I wanna talk about it. Mark, you can talk about other teams. I haven't really paid attention to any other teams because my focus has been on licking my wounds of even though we won, it was ugly.
Well, there's one thing I want to say, and let me like qualify this with the fact Georgia could win the national championship this year. I don't think they will. They've not looked that good. I don't think they will, but they could win the national championship this year. And this doesn't change what I'm going to say. The SEC is dead as we know it as a conference. They are maybe the fifth best conference this year. And just looking through, so far, the ACC is 4-1 versus them, but just looking through the stats, right? It's like South Carolina had Georgia on the ropes. This is the same South Carolina team that lost by 4 touchdowns to UNC. And they had them on the ropes on the road. South Florida is a garbage football team that had Alabama play after Texas, who also isn't good, beat Alabama, right? You had these things. Florida beat the crap out of Tennessee.
Again, beat the crap out of Tennessee.
This is
Sorry, Tennessee
team,
fans. I'm laughing.
No, it's insane. And this is the same Florida team that lost by 3 touchdowns to Utah's backup quarterback. And you know, and we can't have this anymore. BYU went on the road and beat Arkansas this week. You know,
I know.
I mean,
it's
UNLV, who was one of the worst mid-major teams, beat Vanderbilt. It's just, you know, I think that, my opinion, the SEC has been overrated for about 5 or 6 years, but not like this. They've been overrated in the way like, oh yeah, they're probably the first or second best conference, but people act like they're far and above everyone else. They're still a good conference. I never argue this. This is the first year. They're not one of the top 3 conferences in football. They're just not. There's no way. And I don't think Georgia's going to win. You know, Alabama needs to find a quarterback since their 3 quarterbacks have been just the worst things I've ever seen.
I know. I will say it was interesting this week. Everyone that I talked to when I was talking about Jalen Milroe not playing, I was like, y'all, he broke a team rule. Like, that's why he's not playing. He broke a team rule. And they're like, no, they're probably just giving this young guy a chance, whatever. And then it came out that he had broken a team rule and he didn't get to play and he'll be back this week. Like, I know how Nick Saban coaches. Milroe did something unbecoming of a gentleman athlete, one way or the other. I don't know if it's actually come out what he did. What did he do?
He didn't do anything bad. He just basically, like, he was upset that other guys were getting first team snaps in practice. The other 2 quarterbacks, Buckner, who was from Notre Dame and awful, and I mean, but it wasn't
awful.
It wasn't just that. He played poorly last week and was already being talked about being bad. I don't think it was just that I think that him being annoyed that other people were getting first team snaps was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't think he was going to play the whole game anyway. I mean, I think they're going to try to split them up, but honestly, it probably was the best thing for him because they saw how bad these other 2 quarterbacks were. We're like, well, I mean, he might be bad. Milroe is bad, but I mean, at least he can run and he's got a big arm, which neither of the other guys do. So
neither of the other guys did.
But
it
I mean,
hurt. It was painful.
They're going to lose 3 games with him. It's not like he's a good quarterback. He just might be the best of the 3 not good ones.
Yeah, no, you're right. And as much as I loved seeing Tennessee lose, part of me was kind of sad to see SEC teams dropping like flies in the rankings. Like that hurt. And I hate when you're right, but I have to admit it when it happens. And oh, you're right, Mark. Those words taste sour coming out of my mouth. I hate that. But you're right. This is a tough year to watch. It's a tough year to be an SEC girl.
And this is a different year than any other year. You know, again, I have talked about this for years. I hate the way the media hypes them up as like this end-all be-all conference. Every time they lose to a team in another conference, oh, this game didn't matter to them. It's a bowl game. They don't care, that kind of stuff. Like, this is the first year that the SEC's been proper, you know, mediocre or not good. Like, this has really been a step back. And I'd be shocked if Georgia wins. And the craziest thing is, I don't know if the pollsters will let this happen in the playoffs. I could see 0 SEC teams being in the playoff, which would be something else. I mean,
there's no way.
I mean, you already have Alabama and LSU who have lost to non-conference teams, right? So, there's no other, and Tennessee's lost. Florida, like the only team, if Georgia doesn't get in, if they lose once or twice, it's hard to imagine any of these teams getting in because, like, you can't put in Alabama over Texas. Right? You can't put in, if Florida State is, you can't put in LSU over Florida State because they beat them badly. So it just is a really bad year. And it's interesting because this is kind of the last year of this SEC, right? Because you have Texas and Oklahoma next year, who, based on everything I've seen, like might go and dominate this conference next year. But we will see what happens.
This is a painful discussion. This is a painful discussion to me. Before we go, I know that people have really controversial, really contested, I guess, opinions about Dave Portnoy. As for me personally, I think he's hilarious. I kind of love him. I know he's got a foul mouth. My mom can't stand him, but he loves pizza and he loves calling people out for being a jerk when they're being a jerk. So for that, I love the guy. He made some moves this week, honey. So people love to hate Dave Portnoy. And there was a Washington Post reporter who was working on a hit piece about him, and he caught wind of it, and he let her know that she was not behaving honorably. Mark, you know more about this than I do. Give the listeners the skinny on what's going on here.
So for people who don't know, Dave Portnoy is the founder of Barstool Sports. You know, he's kind of a fiery personality. I don't really personally care for him much normally. But in this specific case, I definitely did. So basically, he's holding this big pizza festival this weekend in I think, Staten Island, New York. And a Washington Post reporter contacted all of his, big sponsors for the event and say, hey, do you feel comfortable hosting something, that's by a misogynist and somebody who's a racist and all these other things? Dave Portnoy caught wind of it because one of the sponsors sent him the email she sent. He called her. She didn't know it was him at first. He's like, I'm sorry, who is this? And then he said, well, I know you've been telling my sponsors that sexist, whatever, a misogynist. He actually pronounced it wrong too, which was weird. He didn't know to say misogynist.
That kind of fits his brand, actually.
And she said, no, that's not true. I'm writing a piece about you. He's like, well, let me read you an email that somebody actually sent and write exactly. Basically, she said she didn't do it. He read the email. She's like, oh yeah, well, that was, one of the more pointed emails. Like, well, that's exactly what you just said you didn't do. And, everybody, on the right who has seen the way that the mainstream media in a lot of cases, especially the Washington Post has acted, said, wow, this is what people need to do. And for all of the, personal criticism I have about President Trump's personality, he did the same thing. He was willing to call them out and say, this is absolutely, you have an agenda and you are, lying. And this is
something lying.
Yeah. And I mean, whether or not Dave Portnoy certainly made misogynistic comments for sure.
Sure.
Again, I don't really care for him. I think that he's, he just wants media attention. That's kind of his thing. But
I think he's hilarious. He makes me laugh so hard. I think he's so funny.
But it's like these reporters are acting like, oh no, I didn't do that. No, this is gonna be a really fair piece where they're writing this piece already having made up their minds. I mean, you don't ask the reporter, are you nervous about, supporting somebody who's a misogynist and a sexist or whatever? And it's like, that is not what a reporter asks. That is not the way you phrase that question. You might try to find out, is he this or whatever, but it's just so telling. And it's the same people who've done this to, Elon Musk, who've done this to everybody before, where they're like, we're not reporters. We are activists trying to make you look bad. And Dave Portnoy is not even political. He's actually pretty liberal, I think, on social issues. He's become kind of conservative, I think, on fiscal issues. But it's not like he's a political person, but he's just somebody who goes against their narrative. They don't like somebody who's, going against the traditional media space like he is.
Yeah, and he's just a bro, and there's so many people.
He's a bro.
He's a bro, and there are so many people in those publications like the Washington Post and a lot of those online blogs that don't like bro culture, and he's just a bro. He goes to these pizza places and he tries one bite of pizza and he ranks them, and he's pretty savage about it, and he talks about sports, and that's just who he is. That's his brand. If you don't like it, don't listen. That's my whole thing. It's like all of these people who are trying to tear down people that they don't like. If you don't like them, don't listen to them. There are a bajillion podcasts out there that my friends listen to that I don't like the host, so I don't listen. Just don't listen to it. It's not for you. Like, if you don't like it, I see girls on TikTok all the time saying, ultimate, like, no, instant no if the guy that I'm talking to listens to Joe Rogan. If that's your criteria, then you're probably missing out on a lot of like great people, getting to know great people, but that's your criteria and that's your prerogative and you're allowed to do that. If you don't like Joe Rogan, don't listen and don't date guys that listen. But like, it's no reason to try to ruin their lives. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And outside of all this, I think Dave Portnoy is he's a personality. And look, he has done some incredible things. I mean, what he did for small businesses during the pandemic was nothing short of like heroic. I mean, he literally was spending money, saving small businesses as the government was shutting them down. I don't always like the way he acts. I think that he's, he can be obnoxious and annoying sometimes.
He's obnoxious.
But like you said, he's a bro. And I think it's part of the personality, but he is also a super savvy businessman. And, I don't think he's a bad person, and they're making this because of maybe comments he has made offhand. Probably some of them I think were jokes, and the media is running with it. It's just, It's frustrating. And this is the kind of thing that, if I'm Dave Portnoy, I love this. People who haven't heard of Barstool, especially on the right, are like, oh, I like the way this guy acted. This guy actually stood up for what is right. And I mean, Dave Portnoy also, dealt the same thing with some like sexual assault accusations. And basically,
I didn't know about this.
With Business Insider. Yeah, if you actually look at the way he handled it, and it was all like, essentially everything they gained was like hearsay. He talked to the women that were mentioned, and they had to essentially back down. It really was. He's savvy, and he stands up for what, whether or not he's the best or the worst, he stands up for what's at least true. And you can say, you can say whatever you want about me personally, but you can't lie about me or write these hit pieces about me with things that are not factual.
I know, and when people do stuff like that, you tend to believe them. Like, he's not going to face off with somebody
No.
if they can call him out and be like, you're a liar. So you tend to believe him. And so I think we talk about it a lot, how the media is often unfair with their narratives, especially in like opinion pieces and things like that. And people are afraid to call them out because they're afraid it's going to get worse. I've seen it so many times. They're like, I don't want to do it. We're just going to let it die. We're going to let it die down. We're not going to say anything. We're not going to do anything. No. If someone is smearing your name in the media and they're lying about it, stick up for yourself. That's what we're supposed to do. And also, I go speak to a lot of student groups a lot about what they read in the media and what's really going on. Question everything and think critically. That's my top advice for anybody, is question everything and think critically, because now we're seeing more and more. And you said that Molly Hemingway, who writes for The Federalist, is going to literally form her lesson to her media ethics class about this, because there are so many people who behave unethically, and I'm the first person to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And that has gotten me punched in the face multiple times. There are people who don't behave honorably, and it's nice to see them get called to the carpet on it a little bit.
And also, let's talk about what a genius Dave Portnoy is for this specific reason. This was going to be a hit piece that's come out. Instead of it being a hit piece, he preempted it. He posted the entire video, the 12-minute conversation, probably has like 10 million views on it now, and the piece hasn't even come out yet. So he's already, probably made a ton of money off this. And not only that, he took away all of the, the oomph of what the article would have been. Because now when it comes out,
he took the wind right out of her sails.
What a genius move. And now, like, there's a chance she might even write this at this point, because it is so toxic. And like, he's already done this, and he's made a ton of money, ton of fans on it. And it's like, you got to get, whether or not you like him, you got to give the guy credit. He is an impressive, businessman. And sometimes we're so used to people just sitting down and apologizing. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I offended you. I don't know if I did anything wrong. That having somebody stand up for themselves, people just respect it.
People respect it. I totally agree with that. So yeah, whether or not you like Dave Portnoy, he did a good thing. Go have a piece of pizza this weekend in his honor. I know that I certainly will.
At his festival, if you want, right? It's in New York.
We'll all go to New York and just have a pizza fest this weekend. That's all we got for you this week on Decaf. If you haven't already, you should subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out online, beacontm.org, or on all of our social media profiles. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.